The fifth season of Outer Banks picks up after the devastating death of JJ. In a flashback, we see a young Kiera rescuing a stranded dolphin and meeting JJ for the first time. It's a reminder of how long they've known each other and how much his death has changed the Pogues. John B. explains that the group isn't the same anymore. They're no longer chasing treasure just for the thrill of it. Pope is struggling with the fact that he killed Lightner, Kiera is consumed by grief and revenge, and everyone is determined to finish what JJ started. The Pogues are now in Morocco, chasing Gruff and the Blue Crown. Their goal is to reach Europe and eventually find Gruff's buyer. But getting out of Morocco isn't easy. Without passports, the group has to rely on smugglers, who charge them almost all the money they have left. Things get even worse when the smugglers suddenly separate the men from the women. John B. immediately senses that something is wrong. The boats split up, and the smugglers turn on the Pogues. Pope is thrown overboard, forcing John B. to fight back, while Kiera, Sarah, and Cleo are taken in another direction. The group is separated and has no idea where the others have been taken. Eventually, the Pogues manage to escape their captors and reunite, but they discover something even more disturbing. There is a bounty on them. Someone isn't trying to stop the Pogues from finding Gruff, they're actively hunting them. The group escapes in a stolen jeep and starts looking for another way to track Gruff. That's when Rafe gets information from Shub that gives them their next lead. Gruff didn't go to Lisbon like they expected. He traveled to Croatia. The reason soon becomes clear. Gruff arrives at an antique shop owned by an old associate named Henrique, and Gruff has something very important with him, the Blue Crown. Henrique is shocked that Gruff actually possesses the legendary artifact. Gruff wants him to find an expert who can authenticate it and connect him with the buyer. Henrique agrees to help, arranging a meeting with an expert known as Medici. The Pogues soon discover Gruff's connection to Henrique, so Kiera goes undercover. She enters the antique shop pretending to be a friend of Gruff's son and introduces herself as Larissa. Her plan works. She convinces Henrique to talk and learns that Gruff is going to meet someone at a museum the following day at 5 p.m. Kiera also gives Henrique her phone number before leaving. The Pogues now know exactly where and when Gruff is planning to sell the crown, but there is a problem. Henrique tells Gruff about the mysterious woman who came into his shop. Gruff realizes that the Pogues may know about his meeting, yet instead of cancelling it, Gruff decides to continue with the plan. Meanwhile, the Corsairs are also closing in. Finch learns that Gruff has the Blue Crown and sends his people after him. He also tracks down the smugglers who previously had the Pogues. Zack and Driss are forced into a brutal fight, and Zack kills Driss before joining the Corsairs. So now the Pogues aren't just being hunted by Gruff, the Corsairs are after them too. Back in Dubrovnik, the Pogues prepare to intercept Gruff at the museum. Their plan is simple: blend into the crowd, catch Gruff when he arrives, and take the Blue Crown before he can sell it. But the group isn't united about what matters most. John B. and Rafe insist that getting the crown has to be their priority. Kiera has something else on her mind, JJ. Kiera wants Gruff dead. She blames herself for what happened to JJ because she was there when Gruff killed him. She believes she froze when she should have done something, and now she feels that killing Gruff is the only way she can make up for it. John B. tries to convince her that JJ wouldn't want her to destroy herself for revenge, but Kiera isn't ready to let it go. John B. finally promises that the group will have her back. Meanwhile, Sarah and Rafe have their own emotional conversation. Sarah is pregnant, and Rafe thinks she should stay out of the operation and get somewhere safe. Sarah refuses. She wants to be there with the others. Rafe reluctantly accepts her decision, reminding her that she's family, but warning her not to expect him to sacrifice himself for everyone. Pope is also still struggling with killing Lightner. Cleo tries to convince him that he did what he had to do, but Pope can't escape the fact that he's the one who pulled the trigger. With everyone carrying their own guilt and grief, the Pogues take their positions around the museum. The operation begins. John B. warns everyone to stay focused and wait for Gruff, but then Kiera thinks she sees him. She leaves the group and heads toward the gondola. The others realize what she's doing and try to follow her. Kiera boards the gondola, determined to confront Gruff herself. She eventually spots him and follows him, but when she finally confronts the man and holds him at gunpoint, she discovers something horrifying. It's not Gruff, it's his look-alike. Gruff used someone who looks like him as a decoy, and while Kiera is confronting the wrong man, the real Gruff is watching from a distance. He immediately realizes what she's doing, then he makes a call to the police. Episode 2 picks up immediately after Kiara's confrontation with Gruff. Police surround the gondola, forcing her to run for her life. Just when it looks like she's trapped, she encounters Anton Finch, the leader of the Corsairs. Finch knows exactly who Kiara is, and he knows about the Pogues, the Blue Crown, and JJ's death. Instead of turning her over to the police, Finch offers her a deal. He wants the Blue Crown. Kiara tells him that Gruff has it, and Finch reveals that he already knows Gruff killed JJ to get the crown. But then he tells Kiara something she wasn't expecting. According to legend, the Blue Crown isn't just a valuable artifact. It can supposedly grant wishes and even bring the dead back to life. Kiara immediately thinks of JJ. Finch offers her a way out if she agrees to help him get the crown. He knows Kiara wants Gruff dead, so he makes the deal simple. If she gets her revenge, Finch gets the crown. With the police closing in, Kiara has no choice but to trust him. Finch helps her escape the gondola, but now he knows something extremely important. Gruff has the crown, and he's in Dubrovnik. Meanwhile, Gruff is meeting with Medici, an expert in ancient metalwork who can authenticate the Blue Crown. Gruff finally shows her the artifact. After examining it, Medici confirms what he wanted to hear. The crown is real. Its value could be enormous, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, but Gruff has no idea that Medici is about to betray him. After leaving Gruff, Medici secretly contacts Finch. She tells him that she has the crown and offers to help him take it from Gruff. Finch agrees. The Pogues are meanwhile trying to find Kiara. When they discover that Finch intervened, they realize that he now knows about the crown and Gruff's location. The group also has its own problems. Pope is still struggling with killing Leitner, while Rafe tries to convince him that he understands what he's going through because he's killed someone too. Pope rejects the comparison, pointing out that Rafe murdered Sheriff Peter Kinn and has done plenty of terrible things by choice. Their argument shows just how much violence has changed both of them. But they don't have time to dwell on it. Finch arrives to take the crown. Gruff immediately realizes he's been betrayed. He tries to negotiate, but Finch has no interest in making a deal. He wants the crown. When Medici demands the payment Finch promised her, Finch simply shoots her. He then takes the crown and leaves with his men. The Pogues arrive soon afterward and realize that Finch escaped with the artifact. They decide to follow him. Meanwhile, Kiara has been tracking Gruff. She eventually follows him to a church and catches him alone. Gruff realizes he can't run anymore. Kiara points a gun at him and tells him she's gonna kill him the same way he killed JJ. Gruff begs for his life, but then he reveals the one thing that could stop her. The Blue Crown can supposedly bring the dead back. He tells Kiara that if the legend is true, she might be able to bring JJ back. Before she can make a decision, the church bell rings, giving Gruff a chance to escape. He falls from the tower onto a net below and manages to get away. Kiara searches his back, but discovers that the crown isn't there. At the same time, Zombie and the others are chasing Finch. Finch ends up going over a ledge with the crown and lands on a boat waiting below. The police are closing in, forcing the Pogues to retreat. They soon get surrounded by the police. In episode 3, and 5 weeks after returning from Europe, the Pogues are back in Kildare, but nothing feels the same. They've lost JJ, Gruff is still free, and the Blue Crown is gone. After everything that happened overseas, the group is arrested instead of being treated like heroes. Cleo is deported back to the Bahamas, separating her from Pope, while the rest of the Pogues return to the Outer Banks, and things aren't much better at home. Pope is sentenced to 30 days in county jail, while the rest of the Pogues are treated like public enemies. They have no money, no real home, and barely any idea how they're going to rebuild their lives. Poguelandia is gone, and the money they're owed from the land sale won't arrive for months. Even Rafe lost most of his money after being betrayed by Gruff. The group eventually ends up staying at Hayward's place before moving into a rundown fish camp. For Pope, things are especially bad. He's still struggling with killing Leitner, and being separated from Cleo makes everything worse. When he finally gets out of jail, he seems calmer on the surface, but it's clear that he's barely holding himself together. Cleo, meanwhile, is back in the Bahamas and desperately wants to return to the Outer Banks. Kiara is dealing with the biggest loss of all. JJ's death completely consumed her, and she isn't ready to say goodbye. A memorial is being planned, but she initially refuses to take part because accepting that JJ is gone feels impossible. Eventually, with Anna's support, Kiara decides to attend. At the memorial, she finally speaks about JJ. She admits that she's thought about him every second since his death, and that she still can't accept that he's gone. She tells him that he was the best friend any of them could have asked for, and promises to love him forever. She ends with the Pogues' familiar P4L, For the first time, Kiera allows herself to say goodbye, but even as the group tries to move forward, their problems are far from over. Sarah's 20th birthday gives everyone a reason to celebrate. John B wants to make the day special, but the Pogues barely have enough money to get by. John B then gets an unexpected opportunity. He discovers a package of drugs and takes it to Rafe, who recognizes how valuable it is. The drugs are worth around $70,000. At first, John B knows selling them is a terrible idea, but with no money, no home, and Sarah's birthday coming up, he convinces himself that this is what he has to do to provide for her. He and Rafe take the drugs to Barry. Barry initially offers them far less than they're asking for, but John B threatens to take the package somewhere else. Eventually, Barry agrees to pay $25,000. John B makes the deal and gives Rafe his share. But he hides the truth from Sarah. He tells her that he made the money by catching and selling a giant bluefin tuna. Sarah doesn't completely believe him, but she lets it go. John B then uses some of the money to give Sarah a birthday present. Sarah also visits an old family acquaintance who warns her about the direction her life is heading. Sarah is pregnant, she's living with John B, and she's completely separated from the wealthy lifestyle she grew up with. But Sarah insists that she doesn't care about any of that. She already has the person she wants to spend her life with. Later, Sarah and John B stay in the empty summer house belonging to the old family friend. With the owners away until October, they realize they can stay there. For Sarah and John B, the house represents the possibility of finally having a normal life. They imagine raising their family there and building something of their own. For a moment, everything feels almost normal, but John B's decision to sell the drugs is about to destroy that illusion. Pope is also trying to figure out what comes next. He stopped working and abandoned his plans for school while smoking heavily to cope with everything that happened. Hayward confronts him and reminds him that he can't spend the rest of his life running from his trauma. Rafe, meanwhile, gets an opportunity of his own. Topper tells him that developers are looking to buy Tanny Hill and other properties around Kildare. Rafe could make a lot of money if he helps convince Sarah not to fight the sale. After losing almost everything, the offer is tempting, but Rafe's anger gets the better of him when he gets into another fight with the Cooks. Even though he's trying to rebuild his life, he's still struggling to control himself. Cleo is determined to get back to the Outer Banks. She turns down an opportunity to make good money in the Bahamas because she wants to reunite with Pope and the rest of the Pogues. Meanwhile, Groff is still hunting for the Blue Crown. Anton Finch now has the artifact, but Groff isn't giving up. He plans to find Finch, recover the crown, and continue building his power. For now, Groff is waiting for the right opportunity, and then the biggest problem arrives. During Sarah's birthday celebration, John B notices a group of strangers approaching the house. At first, they pretend to be harmless, but it quickly becomes clear that they know exactly who John B is. They know about the drugs. They even have a photograph of John B taking the package. John B tries to deny everything, but the men beat him until he finally understands that this isn't a bluff. They give him an ultimatum: return the drugs or pay back the full $70,000. He has 3 days, and if he doesn't, they threaten to hurt Sarah. The men leave, and John B hides what happened from Sarah. He tells her they were just drunk fishermen who wandered onto the property, but John B knows the truth. His attempt to make Sarah's birthday special created a much bigger problem. He thought selling the drugs would give them a fresh start. Instead, he's put Sarah and the entire group in danger. And with only 3 days to come up with $70,000, the Pogues may be heading straight into another disaster. In episode 4, John B is still hiding a dangerous secret. The smugglers whose drugs he stole tracked him down and gave him 3 days to return the drugs or pay $70,000. If he can't, they threatened to hurt Sarah. John B refuses to tell Sarah and doesn't want to involve Pope because he's still on probation. So he turns to Rafe. The two go to Barry for help, but there's a problem. Barry already sold the drugs and spent the money on an expensive jet ski. With no way to get the drugs back, Barry gives them another option. He knows about a safe belonging to Topper's family that could contain around $40,000. Rafe doesn't like the idea of robbing his friend, but John B is desperate. Luckily, Rafe is attending a charity golf tournament with Topper, giving John B the perfect opportunity to break into the house. At the golf tournament, Rafe is also being pulled into a completely different scheme. Dale is planning a massive redevelopment project across Kildare. His goal is to buy our property, build luxury developments, and essentially turn the island into an exclusive resort. Tanny Hill is an important piece of the plan, which means Rafe could play a major role because of his connection to the Cameron property. Dale offers Rafe a place in the project if he can convince his family to cooperate. Rafe is tempted by the opportunity, but Sophia warns him that Dale's group is using lawsuits and other tactics to force people out of their homes. She tells Rafe that he's helping the cooks take everything from the Pogues. Rafe refuses to listen. After losing almost everything himself, the chance to rebuild his wealth is too tempting. Meanwhile, Kiara is still struggling with JJ's death. A visit to Mr. Sun gives her another clue about the Blue Crown. Mr. Sun explains that there are legends surrounding the Crown's supernatural powers. According to the stories, the Crown can supposedly bring the dead back to life if used under the right circumstances. For Kiara, this changes everything. She already wanted the crown because she believed it could lead her to Gruff. Now she has another reason to find it. JJ. If the legend is real, maybe she can bring him back. Anton Finch is chasing the same legend. He's trying to decipher an ancient code that may explain how the Blue Crown works, but Finch isn't interested in the crown simply because it's valuable. He has his own reason for believing in its power. He wants to bring back his daughter Sadie. This reveals that Kiara and Finch are actually being driven by the same hope, the possibility of reversing death. Meanwhile, Finch's men continue questioning people connected to the Pogues, making it clear that the search for the crown is becoming increasingly dangerous. Back in Kildare, John B. breaks into Topper's house while Pope acts as his lookout. The robbery quickly turns into a disaster. John B. accidentally encounters Topper's dad inside the house and has to hide while security arrives. Eventually, he and Pope find the safe and there is a lot of money inside. Then they realize something terrible. Topper is coming home. John B. and Pope are trapped inside the house. Topper eventually realizes that someone is there and grabs a gun. The two Pogues desperately try to escape. Kiara receives their frantic messages and rushes over. She creates a distraction by damaging Topper's car, giving John B. and Pope just enough time to get away. But they don't escape cleanly. The security cameras have captured them. Once everyone reunites, Kiara is furious when John B. finally explains what's really happening. He admits that he found the bale of drugs while fishing and accidentally ended up in the middle of the smugglers' operation. John B. admits that he made a huge mistake, but there is another reason he's so desperate. Sarah is pregnant, and John B. convinced himself that he has to provide for her. Kiara tells him what he doesn't want to hear. He needs to tell Sarah the truth. John B. agrees, but before he can confess, Sarah arrives and she has some huge news of her own. Earlier, Sarah reunited with her younger sister Weezy, who's back in Kildare. Weezy tells Sarah that she hates living with Rose and needs her sister's help. Sarah also tells Weezy something important, that she's pregnant. Weezy is shocked at first, but happy for her. Then she gives Sarah some information that is even more important. Rose has a new boyfriend, and when Sarah sees a picture of him, she immediately recognizes him. It's Gruff. The man who murdered JJ is now involved with Sarah's family again. Episode 5 picks up with the Pogues trying to figure out why Gruff returned to the Outer Banks. Kiara suspects he's after something connected to the Blue Crown, while Sarah and the others realize his return could create even more trouble for the group. Meanwhile, Rafe confronts Rose about her plan to sail Tanny Hill. Rose explains that the gold ward left behind was never reported or taxed, meaning it isn't legally recognized. Her plan is to sell Tanny Hill to Topper's family and use the deal to legitimize the Cameron fortune. Rafe refuses to cooperate until Rose reminds him that she has evidence connecting him to Sheriff Peter King's murder. She doesn't want to send him to prison, but she makes it clear that she can if he refuses to sign, and Rafe is trapped. John B. is dealing with an even more immediate problem. He finally tells Sarah the truth about the money he claimed he made from fishing. He actually found a bale of marijuana, sold it for $25,000, and was later tracked down by the men who owned it. Now they want either the drugs back or $70,000. Sarah is horrified, especially after the men threatened her. John B. tries to find another way out. He asks Barracuda Mike for help, but Mike refuses and warns him that the people involved are extremely dangerous. So John B. turns to Sheriff Shoop. He tells Shoop that Julio Valdez, a dangerous drug smuggler with outstanding warrants, will be at a certain location. Shoop realizes John B. is putting himself in serious danger, but when John B. admits that Julio will kill Sarah if it doesn't pay, Shoop agrees to help. The police ambush Julio and arrest him. For the moment, John B.'s $70,000 problem appears to be over. While John B. is dealing with the drug crisis, Kiara and Pope are investigating Gruff's connection to Blackstone. They break into the old Jenrette property and discover a hidden room filled with artifacts. There they find a photograph showing an ancient object connected to the Blue Crown. They soon learn that the object is a citadel, an ancient device consisting of a staff and a strip of material used to hide a coded message. But this isn't an ordinary message. According to the legend, the citadel contains an incantation connected to the Blue Crown, and if the ritual is performed correctly, it can supposedly bring the dead back to life. That gets Kiara's attention. After all, she isn't just searching for the crown because it's valuable. She wants to know if there's really a way to bring JJ back. Then they discover an even bigger clue. The Genrets eventually sold the citadel to Denmark Tanny. That means the artifact could be connected directly to the Pogue family's history. Then the group gets an emotional reunion. Cleo returns from the Bahamas, finally reuniting with Pope and the rest of the Pogues. Pope has been struggling badly since JJ's death, and Cleo's return gives him much-needed support. The group then puts everything together. If the citadel really belonged to Denmark Tanny, where would he have kept it? Sarah suddenly remembers something from her childhood. She remembers an old chest in her family's attic that her mother once called sacred. The Pogues realize that the chest could contain the citadel, so Sarah and John B. head to the old Cameron property to search for it. At the same time, Rafe is dealing with his own grief. After hearing about the Blue Crown's supposed ability to reverse death, he admits that he understands why Kiara wants to believe in it. After Ward died, Rafe spent a long time imagining that his father was still around. He even found himself hoping that a ringing phone might somehow be Ward calling. Eventually those feelings faded, but Rafe admits that part of him doesn't want them to disappear completely. He understands what it means to wish that someone who died could somehow come back. Sarah and John B. eventually find the old chest, but there is a problem. The citadel is gone. They've once again come dangerously close to finding what they're looking for, only to discover that someone got there first. Then they hear someone approaching. Sarah and John B. realize they're not alone. Julio's men have tracked them down, but there is an even bigger surprise. Gruff is there too. He appears out of nowhere and takes Sarah hostage. Episode 6 picks up with John B. and Sarah escaping from Gruff. Gruff is after the citadel, but John B. and Sarah manage to get away before he can hurt them. Sarah then realizes that Gruff may not have been the person who took the citadel in the first place. Inside the box, she found a note addressed to Ward, signed with an E. Sarah believes the E stands for her mother Ellie, and realizes that Ellie may have taken the citadel years ago and brought it to New Orleans. Before they can get far, Gruff catches up to them, but just as it looks like they're trapped, Shoop arrives and arrests him. For the first time, it seems like Gruff might finally face consequences for what he did to JJ. Unfortunately, that doesn't last long. Meanwhile, Rafe is being pressured to sign the deal involving Tanny Hill. Dale wants him to cooperate with the development project, but Rafe is starting to realize that the developers need him just as much as he needs them. Sophia also gives him some unexpected advice. She points out that if Rafe refuses to show up and sign the agreement, the developers could be forced to offer him a better deal. Rafe realizes he may have some leverage after all. Back with the Pogues, Kiara and Pope are furious when they learn that Gruff is being released. Shoop explains that there isn't enough evidence to hold him, there is no baddie proving JJ's murder, and Gruff can simply walk away. Gruff even taunts Kiara on his way out. Kiara is devastated, but she refuses to let him intimidate her. Pope gives her a gun for protection. John B. and Sarah decide that their best lead is Ellie, Sarah's mother. They travel to New Orleans, hoping to find her and recover the citadel. The trip also gives them a chance to talk about JJ. John B. admits that he still thinks about him constantly and even talks about buying a new boat one day and naming it the May Bank in his memory. But their journey quickly turns dangerous. Julio's men track them down and attack. John B. and Sarah manage to escape, but the situation becomes even more emotional. When Sarah suddenly feels the baby move for the first time, John B. is overwhelmed. For a brief moment, despite everything happening around them, the two realize that they're actually going to become parents. They finally reach New Orleans and find Ellie performing at a club. Sarah is nervous about seeing the mother who abandoned her. When she finally approaches her and says, "Hi, Mom," Ellie is stunned. The reunion is emotional, but Sarah isn't ready to forgive her. She demands to know why Ellie disappeared from her life. Ellie explains that her relationship with Ward became toxic after they moved to Figure 8. According to Ellie, Ward became obsessed with money and treasure and eventually drugged her and framed her, making it look like she was abusing drugs while caring for her children. He then forced her to leave without them and threatened to keep her away permanently. Ellie admits that she regrets abandoning Sarah and has spent 16 years wishing she could make things right. Sarah then tells her why she came. She needs the Citadel. Ellie claims that she sold it years ago. Sarah is devastated, but it turns out Ellie isn't telling the whole truth. Julio's men soon arrive and attack Ellie. Zombie and Sarah fight back, and Ellie helps them escape through her boat. Once they're safely away, Ellie finally admits the truth. She still has the Citadel. She never sold it. Ellie kept it hidden because she knew how dangerous it was and wanted to protect Sarah from everyone searching for it. Sarah and Zombie finally have the artifact they've been chasing, but they don't get to celebrate for long. Julio's men catch up to them at the dock. Zombie, Sarah, and Ellie are held at gunpoint, and the situation becomes even more desperate when Sarah reveals that she's pregnant. Just as it looks like Zombie and Sarah are about to be killed, another group arrives. Dahlia and Finch have been tracking the Citadel too. They take control of the situation and seize the artifact. Instead of simply killing Zombie and Sarah, however, Dahlia decides they could be useful, and the Pogues are captured. Then everything takes a terrifying turn. Sarah suddenly says that she doesn't feel well. Zombie tries to keep her awake, but she begins struggling to breathe. Ellie watches in horror as her daughter collapses. Sarah loses consciousness. Zombie desperately calls her name as the episode cuts to black. Episode 7 picks up with Sarah unconscious after collapsing in the previous episode. Zombie is terrified, especially because she's pregnant, but the doctors soon deliver good news. Sarah was dehydrated and suffering from low blood sugar, but both she and the baby are completely fine. With roughly 6.5 months until the baby arrives, Sarah and Zombie realize that their treasure hunt has become even more complicated. They're no longer risking only their own lives. Meanwhile, Ellie has one more clue that could help them find the Blue Crown. She has a receipt connected to Trent Winkloss, a wealthy developer and collector who once bought historical papers from her and Ward. Those papers include Denmark Tanny drawings of the Citadel, meaning the Pogues might be able to recreate the artifact even though the original is in Finch's possession. Before Sarah leaves, she has an emotional moment with Ellie. After 16 years of believing that she hated her mother, Sarah finally admits that she feels like she has a mother again. It's a small but important step toward repairing their relationship. But back in the Outer Banks, the Pogues are facing another problem. Dale is targeting Hayward's property. He shows Hayward evidence of Pope and Zombie breaking into Topper's house and threatens to give it to the authorities unless Hayward sells his property. Pope refuses to let his father's home be taken because of his mistake. He confronts Dale directly, but Dale makes the situation even worse by threatening Cleo with deportation. Pope nearly loses his temper, but Kiera and Cleo stop him. The message is clear. Dale isn't just buying land, he's using money, lawyers, and threats to push the Pogues and their families off the island. Meanwhile, Zombie and Sarah realize that Winkloss is holding the Denmark Tanny papers they need. Their plan is simple. If they can recreate the Citadel, they may be able to decode the instructions that lead to the Blue Crown, and if Finch follows those instructions, the Pogues can track him down and steal the crown. So the group comes up with a ridiculous but very Pogue-like plan. They infiltrate Winkloss's masquerade party, using a seafood delivery as their way inside. Zombie, Sarah, Kiera, Pope, and Cleo sneak into the party, disguised as catering staff. Once inside, they split up and begin searching for the papers. Kiera manages to get close to Winkloss and learns that the Denmark Tanny documents are locked inside his private study. She secretly passes the information to Zombie, while Sarah eventually manages to photograph the drawings. For the first time, it looks like they may actually have everything they need to recreate the Citadel, but there is another problem. Gruff is at the party. While all of this is happening, Pope and Cleo's relationship reaches a breaking point. Pope knows Cleo could be deported, so he comes up with what he believes is a perfect solution. He proposes marriage. If they get married, Cleo could potentially secure legal status and stay with him, but Cleo doesn't see it as romantic. She feels like Pope is treating marriage as another problem that needs to be solved, instead of something they're choosing because they love each other. She walks away hurt, leaving their relationship unresolved. Then everything goes wrong. Kiera suddenly begins feeling sick after Gruff spikes her drink. The others lose track of her, and before they realize what's happening, Gruff has already taken her. He brings Kiera out onto the water, ties her up, and reveals that he knows exactly what the Pogues discovered. He's seen the photographs of the Denmark Tanny drawings. Now he knows how to find the Blue Crown. Kiera begs him to let her go. She even tries to convince him that there is still some good in him, but Gruff is completely consumed by his obsession. He tells her that the crown belongs to him. He believes the crown will give him everything he's ever wanted, wealth, power, and the chance to rewrite his own story. Kiera offers to help him find it if he'll spare her. Gruff refuses. He tells her that she's never gonna see what he accomplishes. Then he throws her into the water, and as Kiera struggles beneath the surface, Gruff gives her one final message: say hello to JJ. For a moment, it looks like Kiera is about to suffer the same fate as JJ, but underwater, something strange happens. Kiera hears JJ's voice, she sees him and tells him that she loves him. Whether this is actually JJ reaching out from beyond the grave or simply Kiera experiencing a vision in her final moments is left deliberately unclear. Then John B. arrives, he dives into the water, finds Kiera and pulls her free. The Pogues perform CPR and Kiera wakes up, she's alive, but the episode isn't finished. While the Pogues are desperately trying to save Kiera, Finch has the Siddeley and has figured out how to use it. Finch begins performing the ancient ritual connected to the Blue Crown. He calls upon the ancient gods and the power supposedly capable of breaking the boundary between life and death. Then he repeats the words, bone, flesh, breath, awaken now. The ritual continues as Finch attempts to accomplish the one thing he's been obsessed with from the beginning, bringing his dead daughter back to life. Episode 8 picks up after Kiera's near-death experience. She tells Mike and Anna that Gruff drugged her, tied her up, and threw her into the ocean. Kiera believes Gruff targeted her because she witnessed what he did to JJ and knows she intends to expose him. She gives Shoop a statement, but there isn't enough evidence to immediately charge Gruff. Then something unexpected happens. A young boy delivers an anonymous letter to the police station. Shoop quickly realizes that Gruff sent it, and the letter contains information that could reopen the investigation into Sheriff Peter King's murder. That puts Rafe in serious danger. Rafe is preparing to sign the development deal involving Tanny Hill when Shoop suddenly issues an APB for him. The Peter King case has been reopened, and the evidence comes directly from a letter Ward wrote years ago confirming that Rafe shot Peter King. Rose wants Rafe to disappear. Rafe is devastated because he knows what this means. If he's caught, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. Sophia refuses to abandon him. She helps Rafe avoid being tracked and even decides to run with him. The two finally admit that they love each other, but their escape is about to become much more complicated. Meanwhile, the Pogues are working on recreating the Siddeley from the Denmark Tanny drawings. Pope manages to decode the ancient Persian writing and discovers that the message contains both directions and an incantation connected to the Blue Crown. The key clue is a reference to the lake of Yazembi, which John B. identifies as being in modern-day Azerbaijan, but they still need to figure out when they're supposed to go there. Then they decode another part of the message. It says they must reach the lake during the fire from the demon's head. The group realizes that this refers to the constellation Perseus, and more specifically the Perseid meteor shower, and the next one is happening in just 2 days. Suddenly the Pogues have a destination and a deadline. If the Blue Crown really can resurrect the dead, they need to reach it before Finch does. The group also realizes they need a way out of the country. Rafe has a plane that can get them there, so their goals temporarily line up. The Pogues need to reach Azerbaijan. Rafe needs to escape the country because he's wanted for murder, so they agree to travel together. There's just one problem: Sophia hasn't made it back yet. Rafe's situation gets even worse when Gruff approaches him. Gruff claims the Blue Crown is real and tries to convince Rafe to work with him. He even suggests that the crown could potentially bring Ward back from the dead. Rafe wants nothing to do with him. When police arrive, Rafe gets into a fight, steals a police cruiser, and tries to escape. Gruff manages to get inside the vehicle and pulls a gun on him, demanding that Rafe take him to the plane so he can go after the crown. Rafe fights him off and manages to escape, but the police are still chasing him. At the airstrip, the Pogues are finally preparing to leave, but then Rafe arrives in the stolen police car. Everyone is shocked. Shoop tells Rafe that Sophia has been arrested. He gives Rafe an ultimatum. If Rafe turns himself in, Sophia's charges for helping him will be dropped. If he escapes the country, Sophia could spend 10 to 20 years in prison. Rafe refuses to leave her behind, but he also refuses to surrender. Instead, he makes a decision that perfectly fits Rafe. He's going back to break Sophia out. The Pogues now have another problem. The police are closing in on the plane, so they need a distraction. Cleo volunteers. She drives the Twinkie toward the gate and uses it to block the police. She then races toward the plane on a motorcycle. The plane begins taking off before Cleo reaches it. Pope desperately reaches for her as she jumps from the motorcycle toward the aircraft. For a moment, it looks like he's going to pull her aboard, but a police officer fires at them. The shot misses, but Cleo loses her grip. She falls back onto the runway. The plane takes off without her. Pope watches as Cleo is left behind and arrested. Rafe and Gruff are also left behind, while John B., Sarah, Kiera, and Pope escape toward Azerbaijan. The episode picks up with the Pogues racing against time. After decoding the Siddeley, they know Finch has the blue crown and plans to perform the ritual at the Lake of Yasmin B during the Perseid meteor shower. They thought the meteor shower was happening tomorrow. It's actually happening tonight. That means they have almost no time to reach Finch, and with Cleo still missing after helping them escape the police, the Pogues are badly outnumbered. Finch has an armed militia, while the Pogues have limited weapons and resources. Still, John B insists they have to keep going. The crown is their only chance to stop Finch, and they also need to figure out a way to help Rafe and Cleo. Rafe, meanwhile, is still on the run after Sophia was arrested for helping him escape. He eventually goes to Barry and begs him to get a message to Sophia. Barry isn't exactly thrilled about getting involved, but Rafe explains that Sophia stood by him when everything fell apart. He refuses to abandon her now. Barry eventually agrees to help. At the jail, Sophia receives Rafe's message promising that he'll fix everything and that nobody is going to tear them apart. Most importantly, he tells her to be ready. Rafe is determined to get her out. Meanwhile, the Pogues arrive near the road leading to the lake and realize Finch's convoy has only one practical route through the valley. A narrow bridge and tunnel give them the perfect opportunity for an ambush. Pope comes up with a plan to collapse part of the mountainside and trap Finch's vehicles. The group gathers whatever materials they can find and prepares the explosives. It's risky, but they don't have another option. As they take their positions, Pope admits that he's terrified Cleo thinks they abandoned her. Kiara reassures him that Cleo knows him well enough to understand that he would never intentionally leave her behind, but Pope still wishes he could tell Cleo how much he loves her. Finch's convoy finally arrives. Finch has brought Dahlia and several armed men, but he's intentionally kept most of his militia behind. He wants privacy for the ritual. Finch genuinely believes the Blue Crown can bring his daughter back from the dead. He talks about the difference between believing and knowing, insisting that miracles are possible for those who believe. The Pogues don't have time to argue with him. They begin the ambush. Sarah spots the convoy and identifies Finch's vehicle. Pope lights the fuse. Nothing happens. The convoy gets closer. Pope desperately tries to fix the explosives while Sarah counts down. The explosion finally goes off, collapsing the mountainside and completely blocking the road. Pope realizes he may have made the explosion much bigger than intended, but it works. Finch's convoy is trapped. John B and Kiara move in while the guards are distracted. They manage to reach Finch's vehicle and steal the Blue Crown. John B tells Kiara to get the crown to safety while he holds the others off. But Kiara has something else in mind. She doesn't just want the crown, she wants to know if it can really bring JJ back. Back on Kildare, Rose is preparing to leave with Wheezy when Gruff shows up. He knows Rose spoke to Shoop and believes she betrayed him. Rose insists that she was actually trying to help Rafe, but Gruff has completely lost control. He attacks Rose and begins choking her. Then he heads to Wheezy's room, but she grabs a gun and shoots him. Gruff goes down, but he survives. Wheezy tells him the police are coming, forcing Gruff to flee, and he doesn't leave empty-handed. He takes the Royal Merchant gold with him. Meanwhile, Cleo's situation gets even worse. A judge rules that she cannot legally return to the United States. If she comes back, she could be imprisoned, and anyone who helps her could also face consequences. For Cleo, it means the life she built with the Pogues may no longer be possible. At the lake, Kiara arrives alone with the Blue Crown. The Perseid meteor shower begins overhead. She follows the instructions from the Siddeley and performs the ritual. She invokes the powers described in the ancient text and repeats the words bone, flesh, breath. Then she makes her real request. JJ arrives, but nothing happens. Kiara tries again, still nothing. JJ doesn't come back. Kiara breaks down because deep down this was exactly what she had been hoping for, but then the crown does something unexpected. Kiara begins seeing visions of JJ and her memories with him. She remembers them as kids. She remembers the adventures they shared, the people they loved, and the life they built together. Most importantly, she remembers JJ telling her that when bad things happen, sometimes you have to let them go. Kiara realizes what the crown is actually doing. It isn't resurrecting the dead, it's allowing her to reconnect with the memories of someone she's lost. The crown isn't bringing JJ back to life, it's helping Kiara finally accept that she has to let him go. For the first time since JJ's death, Kiara experiences something close to peace. Then Finch arrives. He sees Kiara with the crown and immediately assumes the ritual worked. He believes her vision proves that the crown really can cross the boundary between life and death, meaning he might be able to see his daughter again. Kiara tries to explain that JJ wasn't physically resurrected, but Finch doesn't care. To him, this is proof that the legend is real. Before things can escalate, John B., Sarah, and Pope arrive. Pope fires a warning shot and tells Finch that the Pogues have him surrounded. Finch and his people retreat. Once they're safe, the Pogues reunite with Kiara. They initially think she has actually seen JJ, but Kiara explains what really happened. She didn't see JJ standing in front of her. She saw everything she had with him, and that's what finally changes something inside her. For so long, Kiara has been consumed by the fact that JJ is gone. Now, instead of only thinking about what she lost, she can remember everything they shared. The crown's power may not be supernatural at all. Maybe it simply helped Kiara process her grief, but whatever happened, Kiara is finally ready to move forward without forgetting JJ. Gruff is still alive. After escaping Wheezy, he makes it back to Blackstone with the stolen Royal Merchant gold. He sits there surrounded by his newfound fortune and laughs. The Pogues may have escaped with the Blue Crown, but Gruff now has something they desperately want back, the gold, and that sets up the final confrontation. The finale picks up with the Pogues returning to the Outer Banks, only to discover that Hurricane Cassandra is heading straight for Kildare. The storm is expected to become a Category 4 or even Category 5 hurricane, and authorities are already evacuating the island, but the Pogues have another problem. Gruff escaped with the Royal Merchant gold. After Wheezy shot him for attacking Rose, Gruff survived and fled the island with the gold in Rose's truck. Now he's planning to take the treasure to Caracas, launder it, and use the money to rebuild his criminal empire. The Pogues aren't about to let that happen. Even with the hurricane approaching, they decide to stay behind and find Gruff. Meanwhile, Pope is dealing with another painful loss. Cleo has been deported back to Nassau, and Pope calls her. He promises that he'll find a way to bring her back. Cleo, however, worries that returning to the United States could get them both into trouble. Instead, she asks Pope to come to Nassau. Before they can say much more, the call cuts out. Pope is left wondering whether this is the end of their relationship. Back on Kildare, the island is quickly becoming a ghost town. Residents are evacuating as the hurricane approaches, but the Pogues split up to search for Gruff. Jombie and Sarah search Figure 8, while Kiara and Pope focus on the waterways. They eventually learn that a valuable boat has been stolen from the marina and that its captain was knocked unconscious. The thief headed toward Blackstone. Kiara immediately realizes who it probably is, Gruff. She heads after him. At the same time, Rafe is making his own move. Sophia is still in police custody for helping him escape, and Rafe refuses to leave her behind. With Barry's help, he sneaks into the building and breaks Sophia out. The escape quickly turns violent when Benton catches them. Rafe manages to fight him off and gets Sophia outside, but now the police are hunting both of them. Eventually, Shoop catches up with them. Rafe admits that he killed Sheriff Peterkin and says he knows he has to live with what he did, but before Shoop can arrest him, the hurricane creates chaos around them. Shoop becomes trapped beneath a fallen branch. Sophia wants to help him, and eventually Rafe goes back too. Despite everything that happened between them, Rafe saves Shoop. Before leaving, he apologizes. Shoop lets him go. For Rafe, it's a small but important moment. He's finally acknowledging what he did instead of running from it. Meanwhile, the hurricane is getting worse. Pope and Hayward are struggling to keep their boat from flooding when a massive wave nearly sweeps them away. Pope blames himself for everything that has happened to his family, but Hayward stops him. He tells his son that none of this is his fault and reminds Pope that he loves him. Pope tells his father that he loves him too. Just when things look hopeless, Jombie and Sarah arrive and rescue them. The group decides the lighthouse is their safest place to ride out the storm, but one person is still missing, Kiara. Kiara eventually finds Gruff. The two confront each other in the middle of the hurricane. Kiara demands to know why Gruff has done all of this. He's chased treasure, murdered people, betrayed his own family, and nearly killed her. And for what? Gruff's answer reveals just how twisted he's become. He believes the Pogues have something he'll never have, a real family, true friendship, and a sense of belonging. He spent his entire life wanting what they have, and instead of accepting that, he decided to destroy it. The two fight as the storm tears through the island. Eventually, Kiara manages to overpower him. She cuts the rope holding him, and Gruff falls into the violent water below. He disappears beneath the waves. For now, it looks like Gruff is dead, but Kiara isn't safe yet. Her boat is rapidly filling with water. Kiara sends out an SOS and gives her coordinates. Her transmission reaches the lighthouse. Pope recognizes her voice immediately. The Pogues refuse to leave her behind. Jombie takes the boat back into the hurricane while Pope guides him through the darkness. They desperately need the lighthouse beacon to find their way home. Rafe helps get the generator running. For several terrifying moments, nothing happens. Then the lighthouse comes back on. The beam cuts through the storm. Jombie sees it. They found their way back. The Pogues reach Kiara and pull her aboard. She's alive, and for once, they didn't leave one of their own behind. When the hurricane finally passes, Kildare has been devastated. Homes and businesses are destroyed, and the island faces months of rebuilding. But the Pogues have survived, and they still have one unfinished mission, finding the gold. Before they can do that, they help Rafe and Sophia escape. Rafe gives his final goodbyes to the group and admits that he probably won't return. He also knows he'll never get to meet Sarah's baby, but Sarah tells him that he's been given a second chance. Rafe and Sophia leave together, heading toward a new life. Now the Pogues turn their attention to the Royal Merchant gold. Pope calculates where the hurricane currents could have carried it. Using the positions of the lighthouse, the fort, and the area where they rescued Kiera, he determines a search zone. The group starts diving, they search for hours, nothing. Then John B dives down one more time. He stays underwater long enough for everyone to start worrying. Finally, John B surfaces. The others ask what he found. He looks at them and delivers the news they've been waiting years to hear. The gold is down there. They finally found it. After all the betrayals, deaths, escapes, and failed treasure hunts, the Pogues have recovered the Royal Merchant gold, and this time they actually get to keep it. The fortune changes everything. First, Pope uses it to solve the problem that has been haunting him since Cleo was deported. He goes to Nassau to see her. Cleo is stunned when she sees him. Pope admits that he completely messed up his first proposal, so this time he does it properly. Cleopatra Anderson, will you please marry me? Cleo says yes. The two finally reunite. With the money from the gold, Pope and Cleo can finally build the future together without the financial and immigration problems that kept them apart. But the Pogues don't simply spend the fortune on themselves. They decide to rebuild Kildare. The hurricane has destroyed much of the island, and the group now has enough money to make sure the people they care about don't lose everything. Kiera buys back the Maybank property. Pope helps Hayward. The group restores Tanny Hill, and instead of allowing the old Cook versus Pogue divide to continue, they use their wealth to bring the community back together. For the first time, the treasure isn't being used to run away, it's being used to build a home. Then comes one of the biggest emotional payoffs of the season. Sarah goes into labor. John B stays beside her as they welcome their baby. After everything they've survived, the two finally get the family they've been dreaming about. And soon afterward, the Pogues throw a huge celebration. Everyone comes together, friends, family, former enemies, even people who once seemed completely incapable of getting along. For once, nobody is fighting over treasure. Nobody is running from the police. Nobody is being chased by criminals. They're simply celebrating being alive, and then John B and Sarah finally get married. Hayward performs the ceremony, surrounded by the people who've been through everything with them. John B and Sarah exchange vows and finally become husband and wife. It's a fitting ending for their story because their relationship has survived almost everything the Outer Banks could throw at them. Treasure hunts, betrayals, death, loss, disasters, and years of running from one crisis to another. But now they finally have what they've always wanted: a home, a family, their friends, and each other. The Pogues don't need another treasure hunt. They finally realized that the thing they were searching for wasn't really the gold, it was belonging. The Outer Banks was always their home, and after everything they've been through, they finally get to stay there. The Pogues won.